Hey everyone, what's up? My name's Alex, aka Ronder, here to bring you another Seattle Staraptors LSBA video. The fourth season of the LSBA is about to start next week, so today I'm going to be talking about the draft that I constructed this year, as well as take a quick look at my division and how I stand up against it. For those of you who don't know, LSBA stands for Lake Stevens Battle Association, and is a competitive Pokemon draft league inspired by the Global Battle Association League on YouTube. The league consists of 16 players split into 4 divisions, and plays out like a sports season with coaches battling each other with teams of 11 Pokemon that they draft at the beginning of the season, to try to make the top cut to participate in the season-ending playoffs. The special aspect of the draft league format, though, is that each unique Pokemon can only be on a team once, meaning that top-tier Pokemon are a finite resource, enforcing team diversity among the players. What results is a highly competitive, very skill-based, and fun to watch and play in League. I'll quickly go over how the draft works for the LSBA. When drafting, we use a basic snake draft format where every team takes turns picking from players 1 to 16, and then player 16 picks again, and the draft proceeds backwards to player 1, who then gets to pick again, and proceeds back to player 16, and so on and so forth. Unlike last season, this year our draft functioned more like a professional sports draft, and had the higher seeded players occupying the last slots in the lineup, while the new and returning players from Season 2 got the earliest draft slots. Part of the reason for that is that each team who played in the prior season has the option to MVP a member of their previous team to occupy their first round pick if they want to. However, new and returning players don't have that option, lacking Season 3 teams, so giving them the highest priority to start building their team is the fairest option. Also, it gives players who didn't perform as well last year the option to get clutch early round picks as well if they decide to forego an MVP and just pick a different high-tier Pokemon that they want. The higher seeded players aren't completely out of luck though, because they have the option to just simply MVP a Pokemon if they don't want to risk a poor round 1 pick. Another change from last year is that players are allowed to MVP their Mega Pokemon if they wanted to. This will be important in a minute when I get to my draft. For some background on the Seattle Staraptors position in the draft lineup this year, we were actually the highest seeded team this time around, occupying the 16th slot in the draft. We were supposed to be the second seeded team due to taking second place during Season 3. However, Season 3's champion, Nick, coach of the Rock'em Sock'em Rotons, had to drop out this year for various reasons, bumping us up to the top seed. So different people view that kind of situation in different ways, but I personally love being on the bookend of the draft just because when you're able to select 2 Pokemon in a row each time you have to pick, you're able to build your team in fewer overall pieces. You don't have to pick one thing hoping that another piece of your puzzle gets taken up before you get to pick again. When you can pick 2 Pokemon at a time, you can just grab 2 things that you need to complement each other every single time you pick. And so overall, instead of making 11 individual choices, you end up making a total of 6 overall picks, which I view as a huge advantage. With all of that out of the way, I'll hop into the analysis. Alright, so as I alluded to, my MVP for the season was Mega Charizard X from last year. So, when we took it to a vote whether we'd be allowed to MVP Mega Pokemon this year, I was definitely in the camp of people who voted against it, just because not all of the Megas from last year were available at the offset of this year, which meant that not everybody would have that option. However, the vote passed, and so I was definitely not going to take the opportunity to draft my highest kill-earning Pokemon from last season, as well as, since I had the last draft of the first round, I really wanted to make sure that I picked a solid, strong threat to start my team off. That's other Pokemon that I was interested in grabbing, like Feraligatr, Tapu Lele, and Nihilego, all went during the first round. So I'm glad that I was able to pick up Charizard just to start as a solid foundation for my team. So, as I mentioned, I got to make 2 picks back-to-back, so I got to MVP Charizard X and immediately choose my round 2 pick as soon as round 2 started. So this year, my round 2 pick was Weavile, which I don't know, like, one thing that I really like is having Weavile as a Pokemon that's naturally super fast, it's really strong, you can slap a lot of different items on it and it works. Weavile doesn't have the most diverse moveset, but it has super important utility with Ice Shard, it gets knockoff, low kick can be good to kill opposing fighting and dark types. Like, Weavile's just a solid offensive Pokemon. And also, when I went to this year's draft, I kind of went in with a mindset of trying to draft as many of the standard Pokemon that I use on my regular OU team as possible. So, Mega Charizard, X, and Weavile are two of those Pokemon, and so being able to lock those both down within the first round was super valuable. Especially since the reason that I grabbed Weavile round 2 over something like anything else really is because I know that, especially with this group of players, Weavile is always super highly in demand. That's I have expected Chaz, who owned it last year, to MVP it, which he didn't. And then also, Taco, coach of the New Guinea Gudras, ended up MVPing Ferrothorn instead of trying to get a first round pick. And I knew 100% that if I didn't draft Weavile round 2, Taco would. So I felt really comfortable with that choice. So going into my next draft pick, I got to pick Starmie and Volcarona back to back. And so this is exactly the kind of picking round where I can really showcase why it's really good to be able to pick 2 picks back to back like that. So I already had Mega Charizard X, who once it Mega Evolves is only 2 times weak to Stealth Rock, but initially is 4 times weak. And I decided to pick up Volcarona again this year, despite being another quad weak to Stealth Rock Mon, just because, A, I'm a sucker for setup sweepers, I'm not going to lie. As I talked about a little bit last year, and anybody who knows me knows, my main style of play is Hyper Offense, and mainly I still like to play kind of Gen 5e style of Hyper Offense that focuses a lot on setup sweeping. And so adding a Quiver Dancer to my roster this early, and such a solid Quiver Dancer at that, is super valuable. But the thing that made me okay with picking another really Stealth Rock weak Pokemon was being able to grab a stellar Rapid Spinner and Starmie right at the same time. That's for the past couple of years I've had Excadrill as my hazard removal, who's a fantastic offensive Rapid Spinner, but the thing that really didn't do it for me the last couple of years with Excadrill is how slow it is. I never run a sand team, and so you either have to rely on running Choice Scarf, which is good offensively but bad to Rapid Spin with, or like risk dying before you can Rapid Spin. Which again, like last year, I also had Mega Charizard X as my Mega, and so hazard removal was equally important last year. But so this time around, Excadrill got taken in the second round by the person building a sand team, Josh N, coach of the new team, the Rapid Rattatas. But also just Starmie's base speed is fantastic. It's another good offensive spinner, but special instead of physical like Excadrill is. There's just a lot to like about Starmie. So all in all, I felt really comfortable with the pair of Starmie and Volcarona. And the other thing is that most of the fights that I want to bring either Charizard X or Volcarona, like, there's some fights that I probably won't bring either of them, but in other fights, like, it's very unlikely that I'll actually want to bring both of them at the same time. It's kind of like which side of the spectrum I want to hit more. The physical side with Mega Charizard X's Tough Claws and physical attacks, or kind of the more Volcarona hits specially, obviously, but it also kind of sustains itself a little better. That's whenever it uses Quiver Dance, it raises its special defense along with its special attack and speed, and Giga Drain is a clutch cover to be able to put on it. It gets Hurricane in case I want to run some sort of rain team some weeks. Fiery Dance is obviously fantastic. Just solid picks. Moving into my 5th and 6th picks. So next, I absolutely wanted to grab Jirachi again this year. Last year I drafted it on a whim, and ultimately I decided that pairing it with Pokemon like Mega Charizard X, who does a lot of recoil damage to itself, but is also very valuable to my team and is often a win con, having Jirachi as a complement to that, being able to use Healing Wish mostly to fully heal a Pokemon like Charizard X is super valuable. And again, this time I got double picks, so I grabbed Jirachi and Staraptors, the partner for this draft round. And again, just like last year, Charizard X and Staraptor both extremely benefit from Jirachi's Healing Wish. Each of them are honestly win cons on their own in a lot of matches. Staraptor hits a lot of things really hard, and so does Charizard X, and they both do that at the price of recoil constantly, so being able to pick up Jirachi to kind of patch that weakness in my team and just kind of add extra options is fantastic. That's not to sell Jirachi short though. Healing Wish is definitely not the only thing that Jirachi can do. In addition, it's a great pivot, it gets U-turn along with Staraptor, so now I have kind of a U-turning core. It can be run physically or specially. It's one of the 100 base across the board Pokemon, so it gets lots of fantastic coverage moves in both spectrums. And if I feel like being rude or it just seems like the right thing to do, there's always the rude paraflinching with Serene Grace option. I definitely don't want to use that if I don't have to, but if it's a viable strategy in any of my matches, I'm definitely not throwing it off the table. As for Staraptor, obviously it has Brave Bird and Double Edge with Reckless. That's never not going to be an option. Discounting its other ability, Intimidate, is definitely important. With Intimidate, it could potentially function as a pretty good support Pokemon, and it also gets moves like Tailwind that could potentially support the team. Runs both Choice Specs and Choice Band really well. Again, like I said, it gets U-turn for pivoting. Staraptors is fantastic, and what can I say? It's my team mascot. I've had it, well, including this year, now I've had it 2 out of the 4 seasons. Season 2, I drafted it and had to trade it away early, which kind of sucked, but I just didn't think that it would pull that much work against my overall schedule that year, but I was super happy to be able to utilize it well last year, and I hope that it continues to pull work for me this year. Moving on to my 7th and 8th draft picks. At this point, I'm just kind of fleshing my team out. That's my 7th round pick was Azelf, who is by far my favorite hazard setter and just suicide lead in general. It's really good at what it does. It can set rocks, it has a really high base speed, it gets taunt to stop opposing setup. But the other thing that you never can really dismiss is that it has solid offensive stats as well. Even though 90% of the time I'm probably going to be running Azelf as hazard setup, you really can't discount its offensive stats either. Just to grab this really quick, Azelf has base 125 in both attack and special attack, and moves that work either way. So running Timid or Jolly to run it offensively is definitely an option as well. This year I just really tried to grab a lot of mons that either were really powerful in their own right and really just complement my hyper-offensive playstyle, or Pokemon like Azelf and Jirachi and even Starmie who kind of complement them in such a way that brings the team together. Another main focus that I was really looking at this year was trying to keep my team's speed high. Last year I constantly ran into the issue of having too low of a overall base speed. My highest speed tier that I hit was Aerodactyl, which is really fast, and Meloetta, if I was able to use Relic Song, becomes faster, but otherwise I had 3, I think, base 100 Pokemon last season, and then several less than base 100, which, I was able to make it work, and with clever, choice scarfing and trying to build some bulkier offense, using things like Dragon Dance and Shell Smash, you're able to work around it, but I found myself having to play around choice scarfs a lot more than I would have wanted to last year. For example, one thing that I encountered was Choice Scarf Jolteon, because you know that if you slap a Choice Scarf on that, it's just going to be faster than everything that Alex has. But yeah, so keeping my base speed up this year was important to me. Although, in order to get a lot of speed, typically you have to sacrifice some bulk, like Weavile is a good example of that. Azelf doesn't have super good bulk, Starmie has respectable bulk, but not super good, but like, that kind of just complements my playstyle overall. In the majority of matches, I'm going to be looking to keep the offensive pressure on the opponent, and hopefully forcing them into situations where I don't really have to worry about my defensive performance. And then, so I've gone on about Azelf a little bit, but my number 8 pick was Breloom. So this was actually super clutch, because before the you're allowed to MVP and Mega rule came into effect, I was actually going to MVP Breloom probably. Again, just because being in that 16th slot of the first round, I wasn't really counting on getting a super good pick. And also, like, I don't know, Breloom was my second highest kill count Pokemon last season, but the priority that it brings, the versatility of sets that it brings, is just super valuable overall. I missed this in my season recap video that I published a couple of days ago, but I brought Breloom to 9 out of 10 matches last year, but in all 7 of the matches that I won last year, Breloom was present. So it lost 2 matches that I brought it to, but it was a key player in every single match that I won during the main season. So I definitely didn't feel like that could be discounted. The point that I'm trying to make, though, is that instead of MVPing it, I ended up being able to pick it up as a round 8 pick, which is phenomenal. That's if you're able to still grab things as powerful as Breloom in round 8, like, by all means, go for it. So yeah, and with Breloom, I was able to pretty much accomplish my goal of picking up my standard team. The team that I like to use in OU a lot, despite it being more effective in 6th gen than 7th gen, but is Azelf, Breloom, Weavile, Staraptor, Mega Charizard X, and Feraligatr typically. And while I would have absolutely loved to have Feraligatr, Sule, the coach of the Mysterious Missing Nose, ended up drafting it round 1, so there was nothing that I could have done about that. But even so, being able to pick up 5 out of 6 of the pieces of my, standard, most comfortable team is huge for me. If there's one thing that I've learned playing the LSBA these last 3 years, making sure that you have ample power is definitely super important, but also making sure that you're comfortable using the Pokemon that you have is very important as well. That's a lot of the situations that I found myself struggling in the LSBA, like in the 2nd season, for example, where when I tried to take too many experimental risks with my draft. Like, in Season 2, for example, I ended up having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Pokemon, really, that I didn't really use a lot. Up until that point, Excadrill, Hydreigon, Caracosta, Toxicroak, Virizion, and Mega Gallade. I gained a deep, appreciation for all of those Pokemon from that, and I'm glad that I gave them the opportunity to shine. But I definitely feel like my progress my overall season that season potentially wasn't as strong as it could have been if I had drafted a team that I was a little bit more familiar with. Last year, I did draft things that I was experimenting with, but I also drafted a lot of pokes that I liked as well. And then this year is kind of the ultimate progression of that, where every single Pokemon on this team I honestly love. I'm super excited to play with this team. Moving on, my round 9-10 double pick was Meloetta and Kommo-o, the new Fighting Dragon Pokemon. So, starting with Meloetta, I picked Meloetta up on a whim halfway through the season last year, and honestly gained such a deep appreciation for it. Meloetta is an incredible asset in this format because it's really 2 Pokemon in 1. That's for every Pokemon, like Rotom, for example, that has multiple legal forms that, when you put the Pokemon on your team, it's already in that form. Another example is like Kyurem regular versus Kyurem black. Like, those Pokemon have to be drafted separately and are unique in the league. However, Meloetta's Pirouette form, much like Ash Greninja this year, is a form that it gains based on an attack transformation. When you use Relic Song, Meloetta transforms from Aria form to Pirouette form. And so it's really a 2-for-1er. Like, it has the easy ability to run mixed attacker, or you can run it way more easily special than physical. That's if you want to run primarily Pirouette form, it's a little tricky. But the other thing that Meloetta proved to me, especially during the playoffs last year, is that it's both fantastic utility mon. Like, you being able to use it, it's one of the bulkier things on my team, especially in the special spectrum. Being able to use it for support like Thunder Wave or Heal Bell, like it's knockoff, it's a secondary knockoffer that I can use. Just all sorts of special like support moves that it gets like are really useful. Taunt is a biggie. It's one of my 2 taunters along with Como. Like, the ability to have something somewhat safe, like, and cleric-ish, is just super valuable on a team like mine. It's foolish to think that you can run in with completely zero, like, defensive options and be okay, so having something like Meloetta definitely acts as kind of a failsafe to my team. Como I drafted this round for a very similar reason. That's after I drafted Meloetta, and I mean Como was a back-to-back pick, but I had to kind of stop and think about what I wanted, because after Meloetta, like, everything else off of my draft list had pretty much gone already. Like, there wasn't really anything else that I was really looking forward to picking up that I either didn't have already or hadn't been grabbed by somebody else. So I kind of had to, like, take a step back and look at what was left. And just on a whim, I decided to pull open the Gen 7 Pokemon list and realized that Como is a Pokemon that I feel kind of got shafted this generation just with its... I mean, okay, so Como is a fantastic Pokemon. It's another Pokemon that can easily run either mixed attack or physical or special. And, like, my favorite set to use with it will probably be Dragon Dance, just because I'm a sucker for Dragon Dancers, but, like, the only physical fighting stab that it gets is Sky Uppercut, which isn't really the best. It's kind of weak, and unlike Drain Punch or something of similar power, it doesn't have like a secondary effect, and it's not completely accurate. But just, again, it's another versatile Pokemon that serves a lot of different roles. It can fill a lot of different movesets. Additionally, again, it's another bulky Pokemon, and Como particularly is a Pokemon that, in nice contrast to Meloetta, is kind of a Pokemon that has better physical bulk than most of my team. It's got that nice 125 physical defense. So again, it's another Pokemon that I can splash onto my team in the case that I need something to kind of eat hits. And lastly, it's another taunt Pokemon that's... Having a few taunters on your team, I feel, is super important. Like, yeah, just the ability to stop, like, key defensive mons or stall mons and, like, slow them down or force them out. Some things are just straight taunt bait. Like, having that kind of ability, I feel, is super important in the league. And so grabbing Meloetta and Como both kind of just makes me feel like I have that aspect on lockdown. Another factor, which I don't think I was really considering at the time, but like having another fighting type in addition to Breloom isn't necessarily a bad thing, because my team currently to this point contains 1, 2, 3, 4 Stealth Rock weak Pokemon. So like, well, not just Stealth Rock, but Rock type in general. So having a fighting type with good physical defense like that to kind of resist Rock hits is something that I kind of valued. And then lastly, the 11th round swung around, and just like in the first round, I had the very last pick of the entire draft. And so, as I had already ran out of ideas by Como, and usually I use the 11th round just for a fun pick anyways, I decided to draft Ribombee on a whim, because I had a lot of fun using Vivian last year. Just to prove a point to Jacob, coach of the Teddy Year says that Vivian could get at least as many kills as Butterfree did Season 2, which it did. They ended up tying for 6 kills each, but Vivian died 2 less times, I believe. But so I was like, you know what, I don't have a fairy type, and fairy types are cool, so I will grab Ribombee and try it out. And again, it's another Pokemon that's kinda lightning fast. It's not lightning fast per se, but it's fast enough. And overall, I just thought that it could be a pretty cool mon. However, I decided to use a free preseason trade to trade Ribombee out for Minior, actually. I really appreciated all of the benefits that Ribombee could bring to the table. I found out after drafting it, despite having used it a little bit in competitive, that it's another Pokemon that gets dual screens, for example, gets aromatherapy, so it could be a cleric, it can potentially run specs with its good speed or quiver dance. But as I was looking down my team, I realized that it was really a super redundant Pokemon, because for every role that it can fill, I had something that could fill the same role as well or better. That's as far as specs users go. Meloetta, or Jirachi, or Volcarona, or Starmie could all function as specs users. Especially Starmie and Jirachi. Well, mostly Starmie can function as a fast specs user if I need it. As far as healing goes, as far as status healing that is, I have Meloetta with Heal Bell now that can be my status cleric if I need it. I have Jirachi can set up screens, Azelf can set up screens, so I'm like good on that front. And I have like the premier quiver dancer in the game, Volcarona, on my team already. And it added just another Stealth Rock weakness. So the value that I see in Minior, despite retaining that same Stealth weakness, is just, I don't know, there's just something about Minior that I'm really interested to try this year. That's, again, I'm a sucker for setup offense, and so Minior's obvious thing that it can do is Shell Smash, and it gets a good moveset to run Shell Smash both physically and specially, actually. But beyond that, I think that its ability is pretty cool. Shields down, it's somewhat comparable to like a budget Aegislash, where it starts out slow and with good like base 100 defenses but base 60 offenses, and then once it dips below 50%, it swaps the base 100 defenses for base 100 offenses and vice versa with its defenses, but it suddenly jumps from 60 speed all the way up to 120 speed. And so it's just a ridiculous setup mod that's, if you set up a Shell Smash and then get hit and go below like 50%, suddenly you have a +2 speed base 120 mod, which is just crazy fast. And not only that, but like Minior's ability, another thing I didn't know about it is that it can't be affected by status conditions while it has its shields up, so while you're setting up the Shell Smash or whatever, like as long as it's in its like meteor form, like you can't be paralyzed or burned. Like basically the opponent has a hard time crippling you outside of just killing you, which I mean isn't too hard. Base 100 off or defenses aren't the biggest, but like it's still an interesting ability, and I'm really interested to see how I can incorporate it into my team as a whole. And then lastly, just it has like extra options for my team. Like, I don't really anticipate needing this, but it gets Stealth Rocks naturally, so in case I need another rocker, it can do that. Quite surprisingly, it's a mon that gets both screens as well, so it replaces that functionality of Ribombee completely. Like, if I need to use it as a setup Pokemon, I can totally do that. It gets both screens, it gets Stealth Rock, and it gets U-turn, so like, honestly, it functions kind of similarly to how I run my Azelf sometimes. That's, in most situations, Azelf would be better, but you never know. But yeah, it's just all in all, I'm interested in trying out both this and Como, especially as my 2 Gen 7 Pokemon. I have a whole team full of Pokemon that I'm really comfortable with, but like I'm excited to try out some new stuff as well. Alright, so moving on from my draft analysis, I'm going to talk a little bit about my division rivals and how I think that I will stand up against them this year. So just taking a quick overlook at my division rivals this year, the 3 people that I have to fight twice this season who I'm competing against for the playoffs are Dylan, coach of the Detroit Donphans, Josh S., coach of the Galapagos Garchomps, and Jacob, coach of the Port Angeles Teddy Ursas. So this division's really interesting, actually. Josh S. is the one person who's always been in my division ever since Season 1. Like, in Season 1 we didn't technically have divisions, but now in Seasons 2, 3, and 4 we've always been in the same division, so we have a long-standing rivalry. But more to the point, this season looks almost exactly like my Season 2 division, where Josh and Dylan were both into my division, but instead of Jacob we had Alex H. But, so, taking a look, both Dylan and Josh have ridiculously scary looking and offensive teams. Dylan's roster is Tapu Lele, Kartana, Magearna, Volcanion, Rotom W, Sarina, Silvally, Megalakazam, Hydreigon, Lycanroc Midday Form, and Araquanid. So, just the entire beginning of his team is star-studded. He has Tapu Lele, which is a huge threat, and especially since a lot of my strategy hinges on priority, like Weavile and Breloom are both key mons for me, and they rely on priority to be as effective as possible. Tapu Lele and also Serena with Queenly Majesty both shut that down, so that's kind of concerning. Gotta be sure to, have contingency plans for when your priority's not working, make sure that you can deal with it anyways, all that kind of stuff. Next up is Kartana, which is, again, really fast and ridiculously strong, and actually has ridiculous physical defense as well. Dylan and I have done some spar matches, or just scrimmage matches in the preseason, and Kartana's physical bulk frequently surprises me. I definitely need to remain wary about that. Magearna's kind of scary, I'm not too concerned with it. Just Dylan's team as a whole kind of suffers to fire type attacks, and kind of Volcarona as a whole. That's between fire and bug. Volcarona hits a lot of the holes in Dylan's team. If I have a Volcarona or a Charizard sweep going, there's not a lot Dylan can do to stop me, since his priority quelling doesn't matter at that point. But that's not completely true, because he has Lycanroc Day, which has Accelerock, which is a priority rock move. So as long as Dylan plays it carefully and doesn't cockblock his own, priority, I have to remain ever vigilant about Lycanroc and make sure that I'm not trying to sweep with one of those 2 quad rock weak mons while, Lycanroc is still alive. Volcanion is all around really good. I fought them a lot in 6th Gen OU after it came out, and just it's good, but I'm not too concerned about it. I mean, it's the kind of mon where Starmie with Thunderbolt can wear it down. I'm sure it doesn't appreciate getting smacked by Staraptor, all sorts of things. Rotom W is about as typical OU as you can get. I mean, I understand that it has bags of tricks up its sleeves, but that's a good asset for Breloom to try and take out. Sarina is one of his primary means of hazard removal. In fact, it might be his only means of hazard removal. It gets Rapid Spin. It's not the fastest, but it's got really good bulk and pretty strong attack, so it's definitely not something to sleep on. Silvally is actually a super interesting pick in the Draft League format. Silvally is the Pokemon that is Arceus Light, basically, so depending on the item that you give it, it changes type, and also its unique attack, multi-attack, changes types based on what kind of type item you have on it as well. So even though Silvally's stats are not the best, I mean, it's a balanced 95 across the board mon, so like, it's definitely really good, but it's definitely manageable as long as you expect the unexpected. Like, as long as you don't settle on necessarily expecting that it'll be one type or another, like, I think that it lends itself to being really good yet balanced. But that remains to be seen. Dylan might just wreck shop with it, who knows. Mega Alakazam is an interesting choice for Dylan. I haven't always been in Dylan's division, but I've fought Dylan at least once every year. And a Pokemon that he always likes to use is regular Alakazam in the draft league, but he's never had Mega Alakazam before. So it'll be interesting to see how he like, Mega Alakazam plays similarly to regular Alakazam, but you have to be ever weary of Trace and leery rather of Trace and what kinds of abilities it can pick up. And also in Gen 7, now when Pokemon Mega Evolve, they instantly get their increased speed, so it's incredibly fast out the gate. It's definitely something where, like, again, being able to smack it with like an Ice Shard from Weavile or something would be nice if Tapu Lele's Psychic Terrain isn't out. Next up is Hydreigon, which is, again, just pretty much a threat. And again, if I don't have a boosted Volcarona or like Breloom able to Mach Punch it, that's like really bad news for me. Also, I know from experience that Hydreigon can Tailwind things, so like, I'll be watching out for that as a possibility. Dylan has a good amount of fast things, but you can never have too much speed really in this format. Lycanroc Day is kind of a one-trick pony, all things considered. It's a fast mon that has respectable stats, but its main gimmick and asset is an Accelerock, its exclusive rock-type priority move. So Lycanroc's actually really scary to me, just because I have so many rock-weak Pokemon, as I mentioned. And if you were to band or lure Lycanroc, like, it can just do a lot of damage really quick. The main thing that I have going for me, though, is that with Tapu Lele's Psychic Terrain, it kind of his team has somewhat anti-synergy if he brings both Tapu Lele and Lycanroc. And if he only brings one or the other, like, that's advantageous in its own way, because then I don't have to worry with my priority attacks being blocked, in which case Breloom can easily take on Lycanroc, or then if the Psychic Terrain's up, but he doesn't have Lycanroc, then I have ways to deal with that as well. And lastly is Araquanid, which is something that you definitely can't sleep on. It's slow, but it has ridiculous special defense. It doesn't have good looking attack stat, but its ability Water Bubble, like, super boosts its water type moves. Liquidation hits like a truck, and like, Leech Life this generation is absurd. Base 80, basically bug type Drain Punch. I love it, but that means that this thing has reliable-ish recovery as well. So definitely going to be wary of Araquanid as well. Josh's team is equally, if not more, terrifying. He has Pheromosa, Greninja, Zygarde 10%, Mega Venusaur, Latias, Thundurus T, Caesar, Celebi, Moltres, Hitmonlee, and Terrakion. Just looking like so I have the second highest average base speed team in the league, but Josh's team is the highest base speed. But basically, he has Pheromosa, Greninja, Zygarde 10%, ThunDT, Latias, Unburdened, Hitmonlee, and Terrakion, who are all like super threatening over base 100 threats that I have to be wary of. Greninja has the potential to become Ash Greninja if he gets the kill and do even more damage. Thank goodness that we voted to keep Protein Greninja specifically banned in the Draft League format, or that would be even more terrifying. Pheromosa is still legal in our league though, both because we did the draft before Pheromosa was banned, as well as our league doesn't strictly follow Smogon tiers, so Pheromosa is a super fast threat that I have to be, keep in mind. This year he has Mega Venusaur, who's a constant fatty who I hate. That's having Staraptor on my team makes me less concerned about it than I would otherwise be, as well as Meloetta and Azel for strong psychic types that can take care of it, but still something to keep in mind. Latios is another Pokemon that gets Healing Wish. That's I always forget that, but I gotta keep that in mind. Josh can potentially pull the same kind of parlor tricks that I do with Jirachi with Latios. He has a decent amount of hazard removal actually. That's between Defog Latios, Defog Caesar, Defog Moltres, and Rapid Spin Hitmonlee. Thankfully hazards aren't super good against his team anyways. They help against certain matchups, but it's frustrating to have that much removal be present. Let's see, he has solid priority both with Zygarde's extreme speed as well as Caesar's bullet punch, Hitmonlee's fake out, and just again lots of solid choicing options and Greninja, Pheromosa, Latios potentially, Caesar, Terrakion. Josh's team is just scary. Fighting both Josh and Dylan's season is going to be interesting because we all have very offensive teams. However, both of their teams focus on more just instant offense, as if you're gonna rip that cup of noodle out of your cupboard, pour the hot water in, and you get your offense in 3 minutes or less. Their teams are both kind of geared towards that, whereas I feel confident in my kind of hyper offense, especially just since I'm so used to playing it, where although my team looks overly offensive at a glance, it has a lot of inherent synergies and supports going on. I'm hoping that those kinds of factors in my team will help give me an edge up on both of their super offensive teams. Because, again, in some cases they're faster than my mons, or stronger than my mons, and I don't really have a lot that can take a hit, but as long as you can get set up properly, that's key in these kinds of offensive matchups. And then, lastly, my third division rival is Jacob, coach of the Port Angeles Tradiersas. And his team, okay, so it's kind of a stark contrast to all of the other teams in our division. Jacob both likes to play with a lot of lower tier Pokemon, but utilize them extremely effectively, as well as just I don't know, that pretty much sums it up. He uses lower tier Pokemon really offensively, but he also likes using a lot of defensive mons as well as reactive mons. So for example, he has Pokemon like Dusclops, Pyukumuku, and Ditto this year, who are all mons. Dusclops is classic, it can just sit in and eat hits forever with its EV light unless you knock it off, and burn things and be obnoxious. Pyukumuku was a threat that I kind of slept on, but then as I did a little bit of online research in the preseason, discovered that it's in OU, one of the not main things to stop Volcarona, but it's main usage if you want to use it in OU is as unaware pivot, where you can just switch into a setup Volcarona and not die because Volcarona's Giga Drains doesn't do enough with unaware that it can't just recover off. And then Ditto is literally the bane of my existence. It's literally the worst thing for any kind of offensive team because it has one thing that it does pretty much. You throw a Choice Scarf on it and take advantage of a Pokemon that your opponent was super careful to set up properly, and then just steal that and run your opponent's team over with a super offensive, super fast Mon. There are other things that you can do with it, you can potentially attempt to Thunder Wave the opposing team, or lower speed in another way, in order to use Ditto without having to be choice locked, but like Ditto is something that I have to be extremely wary of. Right, so I never actually went over his full team though. He has Florges, Lurantis, Dusclops, Darmanitan, Pukumuku, Ditto, Alolan Raichu, Sandslash, Crobat, regular Sandslash by the way, Crobat, Electrode, and Mega Heracross. So I already know going into this season that Mega Heracross is like Jacob's favorite Mega, I'm pretty sure, and the one that he used the last time that he played in the LSBA during Season 2. Mega Heracross ended up being top in the league in kills that year, so like, that thing scares the crap out of me. Thankfully I have a few flying types in like Staraptor and Minior, but the genius part of Jacob's team is that he has Pokemon like Alolan Raichu and Electrode, which are both fast electric types that can potentially kill my flying things that kill his Mega Hair. Like, it's kind of a game of cat and mouse and like dog. Like, I don't know, the things that kill his things, he has things to kill, and it's like a sketchy triangle of death that, like, he's my first week 1 matchup as well, so like, I'm 100% going into that match super carefully. Similarly, he has things like Darmanitan, which is probably going to be Choice Scarfed, and that means that you have to have something of your own that's like base 100 Choice Scarfed to deal with. I'm interested to see what he does with Lurantis, just because on paper it doesn't look very good, but it seems like something that Jacob might have a plan for. I know to be wary of Jacob's offensive Florges. This is a mon after my own heart. I mean, he can run it however, like, you're allowed to use whatever sets you want each week during the LSBA, but I know from personal experience fighting Jacob that he likes to run a Choice Specs offensive Florges, so it packs quite a bit more of a punch than regular Florges. He has hazard removal as well in the form of Sandslash, Rapid Spin, and Crobat Defog. Not that his team is particularly hazard weak in the first place. And yeah, he just has a more defensive oriented team. Beating Jacob is going to require me to shut down some of his hindrance Pokemon like Dusclops and Ditto especially, to like get around those in order for me to be able to set up my sweep. It's the kind of matchup where if I can get my sweep up and going, like, suddenly the matchup's super easy, but getting to that point is going to be the struggle, like, both times we fight. I'm absolutely positive. So I know that this video has gone on super long already, so I'm not going to go in depth into any of these matches, but I have 4 out-of-division matches this season as well, and those are against the following 4 teams: Josh N and the Rabid Rattatas, Skirk and the Mighty Mimikyus, Taco, coach of the New Guinea Gudras, and Jack, coach of the Wenatchee Wobbuffets. So just super quickly, Josh N has pretty much just a straight up sand team, so I'm going to be trying to capitalize on his overall fighting weaknesses in grass and water to kind of pick through his team. I'm sure he'll have countermeasures to that kind of stuff, but that's kind of my base strategy going in. Breloom should be really good in that match. Skirk's team is pretty scary. He has a lot of good Z-move users, such as Porygon Z, which is the only one that I can think of off the top of my head, but still, his Mega is Mega Metagross, which is Mega Gross pretty much. It's a super, like, strong Pokemon with priority, with super strong priority. That's the kinds of things that I can do to it to try and kill it. Like, I need to make sure that I can even eat a hit to be able to do those kinds of things. He also has Alolan Ninetales, which I was looking at this season. Strong switch hitters in Lucario and Victini, both of which can be run either way, physical or special. Like a strong Ball and Mandibuzz. Like, Skirk's gonna be a hard matchup. I'm calling it. Like, I don't know if I can win that. Taco will be an exciting match. Taco's team pretty much just looks like standard Taco fare. Ferrothorn, Slowbro, Honchkrow, Arcanine, Mega Pinsir, Goodra, Ambipom, Espeon, Electros, Gengar, and Liepard. So I know for a fact that Taco runs kind of a more bulky team as well, that he'll be using things like Ferrothorn and Slowbro, Goodra, and Electros to kinda, like, his teams aren't really bulky or stall so much as they are, but he runs a really balanced offense. That's watching out for Mega Pinsir to sweep me, making sure that I'm prepared for all of Ambipom's coverage moves. Those are the kinds of things that will be important in that matchup. And then lastly, my match against Jack. His team, again, is just kind of scary and kind of really similar to last year, but in like all of the same terrifying ways that made me not want to fight him in the playoffs last year. His roster is Manaphy, Infernape, Zapdos, Nidoking, Mega Blastoise, Swellow, Mew, Shaman, Doublade, Tyrantrum, and Licky Licky. So even more than anybody else that I fight during the main season, his team's got a lot of bulk to it. I mean, a lot of his things are more bulky offense than bulky, like some of Jacob's Pokemon, for example, but like, ensuring that I'm able to set up is ultra valuable in that kind of matchup, just because if I can't set up and boost my attack above like any of my Pokemon's normal levels, you won't be able to like sweep through things like Manaphy or Zapdos. Mega Blastoise is really fat, Shaman, Doublade, like, definitely looking forward to that match. It's gonna be a rough one. Alright, so this is already an absurdly long video, and I'm sorry for anybody who sat through it and wasn't expecting it to be quite as long, but I really hope that I was able to give you kind of an in-depth-ish look at my team for the season, as well as just overview for my season as a whole. That's as far as specific sets go and like actual strategies that I'll be using against different people, like, I'll go more into that on a match-by-match basis. I'm still debating this year whether I want to try and do full team prep videos separate from my battles like a lot of other people in Draft League formats do. I'm definitely considering it. Maybe I'll try it out week 1 and see how much time it takes. But either way, during those segments, whether they're their own videos or whether they are at the just start of the battle, like the videos that I recorded last year, like, I'll go into each matchup more in depth in that way. And then I hope that you guys look forward to watching me battle, and go the Seattle Staraptors. We're going for the cup this time. That's 2 out of 3 of the previous champions, Sean and Nick, dropped out of the league this year, so it's like really anybody's cup. That's Taco's our last remaining champion, but we're gunning for #1 this time. We got so close last season. I think if there's any LSBA team that I could take all the way to the championships, it's definitely this one. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to tune in next week for week 1 of the LSBA. That's our first match will be against Jacob and the Port Angeles Teddy Ursas. Look forward to it.